We're back with another episode of the One Pour Problems podcast, and today I'm excited because we're going to be doing a blind taste testing flight of non-alcoholic beers. I'm joined by Bill Alderman, founding partner of Alderman Company, and today we're going to be talking specifically about CMMC 2.0 and how that relates to mergers and acquisitions in aerospace. So really excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to drink some non-alcoholic beer and talk about CMMC, which can be sort of dry at times, but there's actually a lot going on there. Not that I'm excited about CMMC. It's kind of hard to get excited about CMMC, but there's actually a lot going on, and I think we're going to have a great conversation about stuff that I do think is important to some of the people that are going to be watching this.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. So before we dive into that, right, I think we do have to get ourselves geared up a little bit.
Dive into the...
Let's
could
dive
say
into
booze,
these.
but it's not really booze,
Yeah, it's
right?
not.
It's just
Yeah.
beer.
I've never had a non-alcoholic beer.
So here's the gig, right?
I'm
So
interested.
a couple years ago, 3 years ago, I got into trying to find something to drink, not water, not soda, didn't want alcohol midday or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And these products started coming out. And I think you're the one that told me that this is now like the hottest segment of the alcohol industry right now, the non-alcoholic beers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's brands everywhere, and we got, I think, 4, right? We're going to taste test.
Yep.
And I got some favorites in here, and I got some less than favorites in here.
Yeah.
But this should be fun. But I like these, and I find that there's times when I don't really want alcohol, but like I'm having a slice of pizza on a Tuesday for lunch. You know what? I can have a beer with my pizza,
Yep.
and I'm not going to get tired afterwards or whatever the case may be. Yeah. So I think it's great, and I really enjoy these. So we'll see if you like them.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited.
All right.
So we'll try with number 1 here.
I think I know what this is by the color, but we'll see what happens.
Yep.
And we're supposed to line up our cans, right? That's the deal. Put the can in front of the...
Yep. And so, tastes like a beer. It's not that much different, right?
I can't notice the no
Yeah.
alcohol. I mean, afterwards you feel it, right? Whether you're tired or you feel sharp. But I can't see the taste, especially in the ones that I like the most.
Interesting.
I'm already going to pick which I think that is. What are my choices here? Oh yeah, that's mine right there. I'm going with that one. You a copycat? Is that what were you doing here, son?
Well, the only difference is I've never seen what these two look like in a glass. So I'm gonna have to.
You gonna defer?
I'm gonna wait.
All right.
We're gonna figure out. There might be something hiding here. See, that one's hoppy.
Yeah.
I think. Hey, you think it's that one, huh?
I'm gonna let you go first, Sal. I'm gonna be patient.
Have you seen the color of these before?
Because they make a number of different. Run Wild, I've never seen Run Wild before. So to be fair, no, I've never seen that.
Well, if I can read, this says Hoppy Amber. I feel like it has to be the first one.
Oh, you're just copying me.
Now I'm
That's
copying.
all you're doing.
Well, then I'll take the lead for the
Then
next
I'll
one.
copy you. I'm with you. We're probably totally wrong, We think we're right. Let's go. All right, so there's that. So these are going to be hard to tell because they already look identical, right? And my guess is these might taste identical.
You think?
Michelob and the Heineken? Yeah, I think they could taste very similar.
Heineken's got like the iconic. I know what this one is. I don't even have to drink it.
Oh, I think I know what this is. I think I know what this one is. You know what? I'm going on a limb. I'm placing my bet without even tasting the last one.
Yeah.
And if this is Heineken, that's the one I drink the most. I mean, there's others that I like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it's my favorite. It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
But if that's Heineken, I'll know immediately if I got all these right.
And if it's not,
Then I'm all messed up.
we're
Does that
questioning.
mean the podcast is over?
We're questioning your
You're gonna
palate.
kick me out of here?
We might have to. We're gonna question your palate.
I think I nailed it. I'm probably so wrong. On film, I'm probably making a fool out of myself.
Ready for this?
Yeah. Oh. See, I think you're wrong.
I might be. It has been quite some time.
The problem with this being recorded is like there's a permanent record of what we've done, Sal. I can't say I didn't do this, right? Could we edit this? Could I like ask you to cut this out?
Yeah.
If I got it wrong?
You could, but I won't.
You won't.
All right, I think I might have to make a change here. All right.
Are you going to copy me?
I'm going to copy you. This is definitely the order.
Yeah, but if I'm wrong, now I'm wrong twice, right?
Yeah, definitely not my fault.
All right.
So, I got the results here.
Okay.
I was holding this, not allowed to look
I'm
until
excited.
we finished.
Fun. This is fun. Come on.
Number 1,
Yeah.
Brooklyn Brewery.
Outstanding. So far, so good.
Number 2,
Yeah.
Athletic.
So far, so good. I tell you, I do drink non-alcohol beer. I'm getting to know them. Next.
This is,
The money right here. This is the money.
I should have went with my gut.
You were right.
Number 3, Heineken.
You're a better man than me, Sal. Can we edit this?
Heineken.
Seriously, let's do this.
We might have
to. Yeah, edit this. I'm required. You got me. And it's interesting because Heineken is one I drink a lot. I'm surprised I got it wrong. I really am.
Yeah. Well, we also did jam through those in rapid order, but number 3 is Heineken.
That was good.
And number 4
I
is
may have to
Michelob.
buy more of the Michelob. Good ad for Michelob.
That's good. Yeah, that's right.
No, that was
You might
fun.
get sponsored after this now.
Probably not. But that was fun.
That's awesome.
No,
Those are good.
Yeah, they're not bad, right? I mean, as someone drinks real alcohol, right?
Yeah.
Real beer, because I don't drink a lot of beer, right?
Yeah.
I really don't. I drink these things now. But what do you think of the flavor? Pretty similar?
Yeah. It's definitely similar, but it almost feels like lighter. And I don't know if that's like the alcohol side.
Yeah, like a light beer.
Just like you don't feel like you're drinking a beer. Like I don't know, it is refreshing. Like that's I think what I get from it.
Right. So. And that's how I drink them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of a non-alcoholic beverage.
Yeah.
It's just called beer.
Yeah. That's really cool. No, I love this for this exact reason, right? It's the experience, and that's what got me into like the drinks and really the premise of the podcast was, you know, I actually started my career at Charles IT because of a bourbon tasting, and that Foster, our CEO, is at, and that's where all this started, and then a lot of like friendships and business relationships, you know, started over like just sharing a drink, and it could be anything. So this is one of those experiences and something that like I know I'll hang on to because the first time I got to have non-alcoholic beer in general. So definitely appreciate it. It's cool.
My pleasure. This was fun.
Yeah.
And congratulations. You won.
I changed it. I questioned it at the end. That was the problem. So but
you did but you got it. You originally did get it.
We were close. Yeah.
You originally got it.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So that was awesome. Let's jump into, you know, a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I really want to hear, you know, about your background. You know, you're so tied into like the aerospace and you know the aviation world, and that's something that I think is really cool, really unique, and an awesome story to tell. So, you know, for those who may not know you, like tell us a little bit about like your background and what led you to, you know, where you are today.
Sure. Well, so I mean, obviously, right, there's many pieces, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a puzzle, but there is a piece of me that you can trace back to when I was a little boy, and you can pull it all the way forward. And the fact is that when I was 8 years old, 7, 9, Apollo mission was going up to get to the moon. I was too young, Mercury. I was born in 1962. So Mercury was in my lifetime, but I really wasn't that aware. Right? I was really young at that point in time. But by the time we were going manned, and by the time we landed on the moon, I was old enough to really know what was going on. least as a little boy, but I could process it. And like the little child that sees the ballet when they're a little girl and they want to be a ballerina, the little boy that sees the fire truck and wants to be a fireman. I was very impressionable right at that age. And everybody was watching the astronauts go to the moon. I mean, right? Everybody on the planet was watching, right? And I wanted to be an astronaut. I mean, what little kid didn't want to be an astronaut that was born in the early 60s? And so I couldn't be an astronaut. Well, first of all, the program really, went to nothing, right? But even if it had maintained a high level of pace after the Cold War, what are the odds of being an astronaut, right? I mean, even if the program had been triple of what it was, the odds of being an astronaut were still close to zero, right? And so that was not realistic. I was a little boy. You grow up, you become an adult. And then you ask yourself, okay, I want to be an astronaut, not very likely. What can I do? And so I looked at joining the military, be a pilot, fighter pilot, because, hey, that's pretty cool. If you can't be an astronaut, be a fighter pilot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Because a lot of those guys were test pilots, right? That's where they got a lot of them from, right? We've all seen the movies, read the books, read our history lessons.
Yeah.
So, hey, if I can't be an astronaut, I'll be a test pilot. If I can't be a test pilot, I'll be a fighter pilot. If I can't be a fighter pilot, I'll be an airline pilot, right? And so I looked at all those things. And I couldn't be a fighter pilot because I wear glasses. I wore them young in life. And today, my understanding is if you can meet all the other criteria, they'll LASIK your eyes. If they're close enough, they'll bring them up to standard.
Wow.
Back then, if you didn't have perfect vision, you were not a candidate. So no astronaut, no fighter pilot. So then I literally went to the airports. Now I'm a young adult. I'm high school, college, and I would go to the airport in free time, and I would, grab a coattail of a pilot and say, "Excuse me, can I ask you about your career?" And I looked really hard at being an airline pilot. I really did. Wow. But at that point in time, as I was a young adult finishing up college, and back then the airlines, most all of them required a college degree. Today, there's some things going on where college degree is not required, but to finish the story in a relatively short time, I looked at being an airline pilot, and back then, after college, you had spent a lot of time getting hours, very, very low pay rates. And then the airlines would only take you when you had a lot of hours because that was a recession in the airline industry when I came out of college. And so it was just a really tough time to be a pilot. Pay scales were bad. Airlines were laying off pilots. And so just that market was closed effectively. Wow. So then I did get my license. I got my private pilot's license as I was considering that, and the market really got soft for demand for pilots, and said that wasn't going to pay the rent. And so I went to go work for the Connecticut Bank and Trust, and literally my first assignment was in Middletown across the street at what was the Connecticut Bank and Trust in Middletown. And I had, I guess you got to throw this name out there, Pelton's Drugstore, which no longer exists, but was a really famous Middletown drugstore. They were a client of mine. We're talking a long time ago. But anyway, so life brought me here to Middletown, and then I fell in love with finance and banking and went to go get my graduate degree. I was fortunate enough to get into Kellogg, which was a great stepping stone. And then from there to Wall Street and then to industry. And I wound up at General Electric, and the story can sort of end that in the early 90s, I had gotten my graduate degree. I'd spent a little time on Wall Street. I was picked up by General Electric, and I was in their aviation group and seconded to finance and aerospace manufacturing. And we built a company that was called GE Capital Aviation Services, GCAS, which became the world's second largest aircraft leasing company. So here I am, I'm a finance guy, and I'm back around aviation. Yeah. And that's what led to where I am today, because I was doing corporate development work, I was doing financing, then mergers and acquisitions, and then from GE, having had 5 years of really good training, I went off to other companies, public companies, private companies, back to Wall Street for a bit, and then when I was 40 years old, in a moment of, I think, stupidity or brilliance, maybe both, probably both, I started Alderman Company, just doing sell-side mergers and acquisitions in aerospace and defense. So
Yeah.
I've got my commercial license today. I've got my own airplane today. I fly for that's how I travel. I have a Cirrus, which is single-engine piston, but it'll do about 200 miles an hour over the ground. And so I've got my airplane that I can use for reasonable travel. I can't get to the West Coast, but I've got my airplane. I'm flying a lot. I'll do 300 hours a year.
Wow, that's
or
really
so.
cool.
I'm in aerospace, and I sort of got back to where I wanted to be. It's not quite the moon, but I'm having a lot of fun.
That is quite the story. It's pretty cool to see, like, you wanted to be in that space, from a kid, and still found your way there. And again, it's just a really cool story to say that you're able to find your way back to it, and now you're getting to do it out of business and pleasure at the same time. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I love what I do, right? So quick little story, and then we can talk about maybe CMMC or something more exciting. But 4 weeks ago, I had a bunch of meetings down south. I had a breakfast meeting down on the coast, actually, and then I had a lunch meeting in Alabama, and then I wanted to get home that night. So I flew down to the Panhandle of Florida on a Monday night, Monday afternoon, Monday night. Got a hotel room. Had a breakfast meeting, I think it was Tuesday morning, in Florida. Had a lunch meeting in Alabama, and I was home that night. And I was flying my airplane to get there, which I love, but my meetings were with 2 aerospace and defense companies, right? So, yeah, I'm flying home, and I don't know, I'm over, I don't know, West Virginia or somewhere, whatever, and I'm just saying to myself, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, right? And that's how I feel. I really feel very fortunate. I have a great staff that works with me. 5 people work with me. We're a total of 6, and we're all dedicated, and we all love this industry. And I feel like I'm a very lucky guy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so, I'm curious to hear. You said at 40, you decided to make the change and start your business. What was going on at that time that made you want to make that change and jump into that?
So I wish I could tell you that it was. Excuse me, I think I need some beer. I wish I could tell you that it was a moment of brilliance. The real, being transparent, why'd you start your own firm? Yes, I mean, there was some truth in there that, I was ready, I'd been trained, I had a Rolodex, I had the education, the experience. So, I mean, there is truth that it was sort of the right time, right? But why'd I really do it? Because I worked for a small investment bank in New York, and I walked into the senior partner's office for my bonus one year, and I had a contract that spelled out the formula. And investment bank, a lot of people are paid on either contracts or bonuses or formula, some commission kind of compensation. And so I had a contract and a formula, and I can do math, and I'm like, not very fancy math, arithmetic, and I'm going to get a bonus check of X. So I walk in, and hi, Mr. So-and-so, and he goes, you did a great job this year, Bill, and I met all my numbers, which I did, and I did a decent job. Wasn't the best guy in the firm, but I did what I was told to do, and I was going to get that number. I walk in, he goes, we're not going to give you that number. In fact, we're not going to give you a bonus this year because the group over in London had a bad year. And I'm like, I'm sorry, London had a bad year, but how does that affect me? And he goes, well, it affects you because you're not going to get a bonus. And so I quit, and that's why I started my firm. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't get my bonus check. I felt like I'd been wronged. He didn't say to me, we're going to defer it. You're an equity partner. I was an employee with a contract, and he was breaching it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to work here. So I quit. And I started my firm because I needed a job.
Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting to say that, that was something that you took a, completely stable job that you were like, I'm in a space that I like.
Yep.
It's a good job. obviously not ideal scenario with the
London
the
messed
bonus
up my bonus.
for London, man. But you then take the risk to go say, hey, I'm going to go try to do this on my own.
Yeah.
And starting a business is already not an easy thing to do,
right,
let alone starting a space in the space that you're in, specifically niched to aerospace and defense contractors and on the sell side. Right. So what was going through your mind that you were like, I'm going to go do this?
Well, my career, so the work I was doing for that investment bank and the work I've been doing before that, and this is a decade after I left GE, or almost a decade. And so I had a lot of experience doing sell-side M&A in the aerospace and defense industry. It's what I'd been doing.
Yep.
And so my knowledge, my Rolodex, my skill set was in that niche. It wasn't that I was saying, oh, I'll go reinvent myself. It was, I can do this for myself.
Yeah.
I don't need an institution around me. I didn't realize how hard it would be, right? My advice to my younger self would be, go ahead and do this, but have your eyes wider open, because it's going to be harder than you could ever imagine. And that's I would do it again. I really would do it again. I'm glad I did it. But there were times when it was really hard. Cash was tight. Just lots of difficulties at certain points. I mean, at one point in time, shortly after founding the firm, we had 9/11. I mean, I started the firm in March of 2001. Wow. 9/11 was September. And today, for 17, 18 years more, we've been aerospace and defense.
Yeah.
When I left GE, when I was on the street, Wall Street, I wasn't on the street, I'm employed. When I was on Wall Street, it was all commercial aviation. That's what I'd specialized in. So right after we started the firm in March of 2001 with 3 or 4 people, we closed our first deal within 4 months, or 5 months, which was record time.
Yeah,
Deals
wow.
typically take 9 months or so. And so by late summer, we were cash flow positive. We were signing large leases. We were taking more space. We were on Park Avenue. Then we went over to Times Square. Beautiful space across from the Reuters building, hiring more people. So we're making money, but we're now spending actually a lot of money, and we're incurring long-term contracts like leases.
Yep.
So things better continue to grow, or we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And looking back now, obviously I took too much risk too quickly, but I didn't expect 9/11 or an event like that. I've since learned that we can have pandemics and lots of other things can happen in life.
Yep.
But I did get in front of my skis, and 9/11 hit, and our revenue book went to zero. Wow. Our revenue went to zero, and our pipeline went to zero because we were the commercial aviation people. And so the D of aerospace and defense, A&D, took a year to ramp that up. Now, you're making engine parts for Pratt & Whitney that go on a commercial engine. Why can't you make parts that go on a military engine?
Yep.
And so most of our clients had some exposure to defense, so we knew something about the market, but we weren't defense experts like we are today, having been focused on defense for years. Back then, it was a hard sell. It'd be like, well, Bill, aren't you the commercial aviation folks? I'm selling my defense company. And you'd make the argument, well, you're 60% defense, 40% commercial. Come on, give me a chance. Right? Yeah. It was hard. Those were hard times.
I'm sure. Yeah. And so how'd you then make the pivot, right? Because, you had some experience there and you were known for the commercial side.
Yeah.
What was really like the pivoting point? Was that a specific instance? Was it a strategic decision of this will always be a safe sector to be in? Yeah. What made that happen?
One of the ways that I was able to do it was that Bruce Andrews, who's been my partner for 23 of the 24 years, he was one of our first clients.
Oh, really?
And I guess he liked us a lot, and then came to join us full time. And Bruce is effectively he's my partner and my mentor.
That's cool.
And my name's on the door, but we are where we are in large part because of my dear friend Bruce. And he came out of the defense side of the world. In fact, he had clearances when he was a young man.
Wow.
So he really understands the defense side of the world.
Yeah.
And so it was really his effort that helped us migrate and his credibility. So we would go into meetings and be like, yeah, Bill, you're the commercial guy, but oh yeah, that's right. You've got your partner Bruce, and he knows more about this than a lot of people ever will.
Yeah.
And so it was in part by having staff that was able to help us and educate me. And he showed me what I needed to learn, etc. So I wasn't doing it all by myself.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've learned as I've built the firm is it's all about people.
Yeah.
I can't do this on my own, right?
Yeah, for
You
sure.
we're small, but you surround yourself by really talented people.
Yeah, for sure. And so if you jump into the, specifics of like, who are the people that you work with, right? So you said you're on the sell side of defense manufacturers. What's a typical organization look like that might come to you, and what are generally the reasons that they're looking to sell or something like that?
So there's a myriad of reasons and a myriad of kinds of companies, but I will tell you the bulk of the companies we've sold, I think we've had like 60 transactions over 24 years, something like that.
Yeah, I saw something like 2 billion.
Yeah, but there's a couple of outliers in there, right? So, numbers are fun, right? So you can have an average that's huge because you had one number that was enormous, right? So, to be fair, our marketplace is in the $20 million transaction size to $150 million transaction size, and yes, we've done some enormous deals, and it moves the average, right?
Yeah.
But our sweet spot's somewhere around $50 million transaction. And in A&D, typically you can use revenue as a proxy. It's much more complicated than that, right? You can't just say, oh, you have $30 million in revenue, you must be worth $30 million. Life ain't that simple, right?
Not that math.
It's not that simple. But if you wanted a ballpark, right, just a conversation. So a $50 million company might have $50 million in revenue. Might have 100, might have 20, but it's that size. These aren't billion-dollar companies, and they're usually not VC startup companies with $3 million and 4 employees that are worth $1 billion, right? That's not our market.
Yeah.
But our typical company and client is somewhere in the A&D supply chain. And the way we define our market, our clients are typically between $20 and $150 million of transaction size. And it gets complicated, and it's not as simple as saying, oh, you have $50 million in revenue, you're probably worth $50 million. But as a benchmark for a conversation like this, a lot of our clients have between $20 million in revenue and $150 million in revenue. That size of company. And my understanding is those are many of your kinds of companies at Charles, right? We sort of work in this similar marketplace.
Absolutely.
And our clientele many of them are family or privately owned. My guess is you know the marketplace. Some are institutionally owned, could be owned by a group of shareholders, a number of families, a large family office, a private equity firm. There's a lot in there, but the preponderance are private founder owners, maybe the individual that actually started the company, or maybe their descendant, right, or thereof. The best reason, you asked the question, like, why do people sell their companies? The best reason, and I'm going to come back to explain what I mean by best, the best reason is I want to retire and I either don't have children that want the business or my children don't want the business, right? So I don't have children or my children don't want it. Because if your children want it, and this is not a sales pitch for Alderman Company, it's actually the opposite. But we really do try to give our clients the best advice, even if it means they're not going to pay us any money, or our potential clients. We think it serves us very well to just give the best advice.
Yeah, you got to be real.
It comes around, right?
Yeah.
If you can give your business to your child or cousin or niece or nephew, there are so many benefits to the family in terms of continuity, your employees, your clientele, your suppliers, the strength of the business, wealth generation, tax avoidance, legitimate, not illegal tax avoidance, deferring taxes. It's just a wonderful thing, and not to get all sort of patriotic about it, but one of the great things about our country is our capitalist economy and the ability for families to build businesses and pass them on to their kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the American dream, right? My family had a business that went 3 generations. Didn't get to me, but it was a retail furniture business that times moved on and the family sold the business off. But 3 generations. I mean, from Ukrainian immigrants to my father, right? One business. I mean, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
It fed a lot of people. So the best reason for selling a business is that the owner founder doesn't have family to sell it to, and they want to retire.
Got it.
That's the best reason. And why is that the best reason? Well, if I came to you and said, hey, I want to sell you my business, I'm 42 years old, it's a really great business, and you should pay me a lot of cash today to buy my business. If I was you, I'd be scratching my head saying, why is this young person with a future in front of them who seems to love this business and thinks it's a great business, why would they cash out?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they could want to go climb a mountain, but 42 years old, you can climb a mountain for a year, come back, right?
Yep.
And so buyers are skeptical when someone says, I want to sell my business for a reason that doesn't really resonate.
Yeah.
And there are reasons that resonate. It's not only I want to retire, right? There's lots of good reasons to sell a business other than I want to retire. But the best reason? I built the business 35 years ago. My kids don't want it. I'm moving to Florida.
Yeah. Huh. And I think that is what's interesting about that is it rings true to the industry, because even on the show I've had 2 different family-owned manufacturers come on, and it's been passed down in their family, or their family is like very involved in the business currently, and it says something about that space.
Yep.
And the type of people that are in it. And I think, again, that's another reason why those manufacturers do so well, is because they have that, like, there's always like the family feel, but like it's truly like it's family, and then they get everyone that joins them to buy into that. And so that's something that I love about that space. And I think it's interesting that you get to also consult with them to be able to say, like, I don't know if I would do this if I were you. Is there interest or someone else in your family that you might be able to bring along for this and continue to pass it down? I think that's really unique, especially from your side, where your business is transacting those organizations. You're also consulting, against that.
Right.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I had the privilege of working for General Electric for 5 years. I worked for a couple of big banks on Wall Street, but in terms of industry, aerospace, defense, I had the privilege of working for GE for 5 years. I was the vice president of that little business unit I was in, and there was a lot of, and clearly GE had some troubles, right? And GE spun up, broke up.
Yeah.
Aerospace was spun off, and it's done very well since, but GE had some real troubles, right? And so there were clearly some mistakes made. But when I worked there in the early 90s, I was surrounded by brilliant people, amazing resources, amazing technology, amazing thinking. But I was not cut out for an organization with 220,000 people.
Yeah.
Just culturally, right? And thank goodness there are a lot of people that want to work for big companies like Lockheed or wherever. Thank goodness, right? I mean, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And maybe because I came from the family enterprise, where I came from a family of immigrants that for 3 generations had a family business, and maybe that instilled in me a passion for that kind of environment.
Yep.
I mean, I love GE. I learned so much, and I still have very close friends. In fact, Saturday there's 4 of us from our GE days going out for lunch. I mean, this was back, 1992 we worked together.
Wow.
And so those bonds are strong. It was a great place to work, but it wasn't long-term for me. I like working with that mostly that family enterprise. I just find that to be a phenomenal environment for business. And as a consumer, I would prefer to buy my services and products from a family-owned enterprise. I find that I get better service, and if there's a problem, I can call a human being. And so whether it's having my car serviced or whatever, I'd rather go to that family-owned enterprise that's been there since 1980.
Yep.
Because I just tend to get better service.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a really powerful thing to understand, like, who you are and like what serves you. You know, I think a lot of leaders and a lot of emerging leaders that, you know, are listening to the show, you know, they're hearing from people that have been on both sides, where they've been with larger organizations, or they prefer to be in a large organization, or they prefer to be in a small one. But having the experience from both of them, I think is a really unique perspective, and allows you to really like formulate kind of who you are, and who you want to be as you continue in your career. And so I think that's another testament to, you know, trying those things and truly understanding, you know, what you want out of your, you know, your career, your day to day, and what kind of fills your cup.
Yeah. Well, and I heard you say something the other day about your business and the way you guys run Charles IT, and that was that you made a comment, and paraphrase, apologies for not getting the quote exactly right, but we deliver IT MSP services. What we really deliver is customer service.
Yeah.
Right? I think those are roughly your words.
Yep.
And it maybe in other markets it's different, but in the middle market of those $20 to $150 million companies that mostly are privately owned, or at least closely owned and run, they want service.
Yeah.
And you made the comment that, you know, I can drive to go see my clients. They may have offices around the world, right? And we can support them around the world, but I want to be able to go have a beer, no alcohol maybe, a beer with my client.
Yeah.
I really believe that. And I look at the way our little firm, and again, we're just 6 people. We don't buy a lot, but we buy things, right? We spend money. When we buy things, I want to be treated like a human being.
Yeah.
I don't want a chat bot. I don't want to wait in line.
Yeah.
I'd like to know that, you know, I'm treated with respect, and there's a human that appreciates my business. And maybe the chat bots will take over the world someday, Sal. Maybe we'll all work for robots. But I think during my lifetime, I think that human interaction really matters.
Yeah. No, it definitely does. And if I take away anything from this episode today, it's that we need a plane. And we need to be able to fly to go visit our clients wherever they are.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that as far as a way to continue the real relationships.
Yeah.
And,
Agreed.
you know, a breakfast meeting in Florida, followed by lunch in Alabama. You know?
Not a bad way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And home that night.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, we talked earlier in the episode about how we'll be broaching the topic of CMMC, you know, something super sexy to talk about, and, you know, one of the more exciting things that we could talk about today. And my goal is not to dive into the nitty-gritty of like everything CMMC, but more talk specifically about how that's impacted the M&A market, and specifically, you know, where is that a consideration now, you know, during your process of helping bring that company to market and promoting whether they are or they're not CMMC. You know, that's something that I think is one of the major things that we should be talking about. Yeah. So as far as that, you know, give me a little bit of, you know, where you're seeing that CMMC in the marketplace.
So I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about the sale process.
Yeah.
So that my words about CMMC due diligence sort of have a place to sit.
Sure.
Okay. So when we sell a company, it's not that different from selling a house, right? And probably most people that are watching this, some have M&A experience, but a lot don't. But most have sold a house, right?
Yep.
And so it's just a nice, clean analogy. And so we say this to our clients a lot. Especially that client that's never bought or sold a company before. You know, Bill, can you sort of give me an analogy? Right? Well, yeah, I'll give you a great analogy. You've sold houses before, right? Well, did you did you fix up the bathroom before you sold it? Bathroom was just a little dirty. Maybe you spent a little bit of money and painted the wall.
Yeah.
The bathroom was really bad and was bringing down the value of the house. You're going to wait 3 months, really redo the bathroom or the kitchen or whatever, right? I mean, it's just that resonates, right?
Yeah.
The gardening is a mess. Plant some nice new flowers, right? When the house is being shown, clean the house up and put an apple pie in the oven so it smells, right? I mean, it's just, that resonates with everybody. Okay, so selling your company is the exact same thing. Now, you can't just paint the bathroom, right? You have contracts, right? And so you may have a contract, 40% of your business may be on one program with one huge customer. You can't paint the contract. The contract is the contract.
It is what it is.
Okay? You can't change it. You can't call up your customer and say, I'm selling my company. Can you give me a little more margin on that contract? Right? Okay. But you can make sure that the contract, you have a signed copy. You can make sure the amendment from last year got put in the file so buyers aren't chasing paperwork. But more importantly, you can get ready for due diligence. And what is buyer due diligence? And this is really the value we bring to our clients. Yes, we can tell them what we think they're worth. Yes, we can bring them to market if that matches their expectations, and we're pretty good at knowing what things are worth.
Yep.
We can find the right kind of buyer. Oh, I want to sell to this kind of buyer. I don't want to sell to that kind of buyer. We can help you find the right kind of buyers. We can negotiate. But in the end, you're not going to get a wire transfer for $40 million unless the buyer does some due diligence. You're not gonna get the asking price for your house unless they do a structural inspection and make sure the roof doesn't need to be replaced, because it's $40,000 and they need to know how much life is left in the roof before they're going to sign the contract. It's due diligence. Okay. Well, buying a house is a lot easier in terms of due diligence. It's a one-day inspection usually. Companies typically 60 to 90 days. And the last deal we did, the buyer spent about $1 million on due diligence professionals.
Wow.
Okay. It was a large transaction, but this is not little stuff, right? And it makes common sense.
Yeah.
They're going to wire you $40 million and you're off to the sunset. They'd like to know they're getting what they're getting, and not just sort of getting what they're getting. Dig in, right? And so this is where CMC plays. And so I gave you that pretext so that we would have an understanding of what I'm about to say about CMMC.
Yeah.
The value of your company is not in the CMMC. It's in your contracts, your relationships, your IP, your know-how, your people, right? But in the end, if you're not CMMC compliant and you're going to breach some contracts and you're going to do things with CUI that are in violation of the DFARS, that's serious money.
Yeah.
And no buyer is going to buy you for the price you thought they were going to pay for you if they're expecting that contract to get terminated for cause and next year's earnings go to zero because of it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're not CMMC compliant and things are serious, that all could take place, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does CMMC play? Well, here's the good news, Sal. A couple of years ago when we were selling companies, and this obviously only applies to defense, right? If you're a pure commercial player in aerospace selling to Boeing commercial or whatever, it doesn't apply. I mean, you should not have, your IT systems shouldn't look like Swiss cheese. Not a good idea, because you're going to fail due diligence, not CMMC. You're just going to fail due diligence because your systems are awful, right?
Yep.
But if you're a contractor, you got to be CMMC compliant. And more so as we go forward and as these things roll out, and you know more about CMMC regs than I do. But we know enough to get through due diligence.
Yep.
And this is the thing I say to clients as well. What's your role in due diligence? Well, we're like the general contractor on your house. We know all the trades, we know the tradespeople, and we know roughly what they should be doing. Right? We can tell the plumbers and the electricians, you should do this today and that tomorrow. We can do all of that. But we are not electricians, and we're not even licensed to do the wiring.
Yeah.
Right? We're not a plumber. We shouldn't be doing your plumbing. So we are not CMMC, we're not RP, we're not CPAOI, we're not any of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We're not certified, we're not anything, but we're smart enough to know you guys have contracts with the DOD, and some of them are rolling into CMMC obligations, and they state that in the award, you guys have to be compliant. What have you done to be compliant?
Yep.
Right? And how do you, if you're just self-attestation, that for almost everything going forward now, we're done, right?
Yep.
So we're smart enough to know that you should call in a professional, and you may not need a C3PAO, right?
Yep.
But you need more than you've got. And we can't get you what you need, but we can say, we think you got a problem here. And so the issue with CMMC, the good news is this. Now that the DFARs are out, my understanding is there's still a piece to be written. Is that right?
We're not completely finalized yet.
Yeah. But we're darn close, and we have a framework that is written, correct?
Yep.
3 years ago, we were playing around with NIST and CMMC1, and I mean, it was gray, right?
Yeah.
So we were doing deals 2 years ago that literally the professionals on both sides couldn't agree on what was required.
Yep.
And that's like saying to a contractor, inspect my roof. And one of them says your roof has 30 years left in it, and the other one says you've got 6 months left. I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to say 2 years versus 18 months. 6 months, I mean, guys, we can't work with that.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah, you can't negotiate. You both see the world differently.
Yeah.
We're, I think now, thank goodness, in a place where everybody can sort of agree. There is some things still to be written.
Yep.
But we know that if the award doesn't say it, you're not obligated to do it. If the award says you can self-attest, you can still self-attest.
Yep.
Those things still weren't, is it NIST, is it not NIST? And so the good news is there is now some semblance of, I don't call it normalcy, of a path forward. And so we can say to a seller, hey, look, we're going to go to market in 3 months. Bring in some CMMC expertise. Bring in people who are registered. Maybe they're not certified, but they're at least registered. There's language we can grab onto. We can show them the regs, and we can tell them, go get some help here, and we can guide them. So when we get to due diligence, it's not a mess. Because I will tell you, Sal, a couple of years ago, I mean, it was a mess.
Interesting. I think about it now from, taking a step back from my perspective of the IT side, where we do walk into a lot of these organizations who are like, we're CMMC, we're, our score's high enough, we're going to make sure that we're there. And then we go in and do, some baseline assessment and understanding of where they're at, and they're not remotely close. And that's because they either don't have someone that truly understands it inside, or they're working with an organization like an MSP that claims to understand it, but maybe doesn't have the expertise as well.
Right.
And so it's interesting that you'll go into that process and then be able to help kind of advise them on, like, if you truly are marketing that you have DoD contracts, then you absolutely need to make sure that you have the systems and controls in place to be able to, garner the asking prices that you're looking for in a transaction. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for a while there, it literally was in due diligence. Are you even compliant on your current contracts? I mean, it was so uncertain that buyers and sellers couldn't even agree if the seller was compliant with its existing contracts.
Yeah.
That's how messy I think it was. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah, it definitely.
Now that there's a framework, right? Instead of saying, I know a person that can help you, you can go to the regs and say, well, there are registered professionals and there are RPOs. Right? So these people took the exam and they passed the exam that was set by the board, right, of CMMC. And so it's all just there. It's like you need audited statements. Okay, you go to a CPA, they've passed all the tests, they're certified, they're licensed, we now have a framework. Right? It's not totally done, but we have a framework. And so, we can say to someone, okay, look, you're in compliant with your contracts. It says self-assessment. We all think that's gone, but that's what your contract says, and you're compliant. You think you're going to have this projected revenue going forward, and these are your projections, and you're going to be bidding on these kinds of contracts. Well, this is what CMM says you have to do to bid on those contracts.
Yep.
It's no longer, gee, what is it? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's written. And we can advise and say, look, if that's your plan, then you need to go to an RPO and you need to get advice. You may not need to do a C3PAO, but your RPO can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask us,
Yep.
but we can tell you to get your engage in RPO and have the conversation.
Yeah, and that again, it's one of the most important things that we try to give as far as advice to organizations that come to us as well. Is they're like, we're looking to get an audit done, and we were always like, whoa, like let's take a step back from that, right? And if we do just a baseline understanding of what's going on in your organization, and then we see you don't have an incident response plan or a disaster recovery plan, you like, what else is not there?
Right.
Why go spend the money to go get audited?
Which is going to say you failed. That's all it's going to do for you.
Exactly, right? And so that's when you go through that process and you say, okay, now I'm going to go back. I'm going to actually get the gap assessment where I'm going to actually audit and understand what are the things I'm missing,
Right.
and then I'll be able to come up with my plan of how to attack those things. Right. But I think that is really interesting on the sell side to try to make sure that, you know, that's a piece of your process where you're like, well, do you actually have these things in place? Like, show me your SSP and POAM and prove that, like, this is where you are, because, like, I'm here to help you. But the second that due diligence starts and they're diving into your world, you don't think they're going to ask for that?
Exactly. And we can't help you at that point in time. It's like they walked in the house and the bathroom is a mess,
Yeah.
right? And it needs to be reconstructed.
Yeah.
I can't say to you, let's clean the bathroom up. You're showing it to buyers,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't say to them, oh, I'll fix the bathroom. You've already had that first impression,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, 100%. And
Yeah.
so, again, we're not experts in a lot of fields, right? It's not just CMMC. There's a lot of other due diligence,
Mm-hmm.
accounting. A lot of due diligence is accounting.
Mm-hmm.
We're not accountants.
Yep.
We all have sort of accounting degrees. We know how to read accounting statements, but put accounting statements together for you?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
Right? But we can tell you what level you need. Do you need an audit?
Mm-hmm.
Should you get a review? Maybe a quality of earnings will work, right? We can recommend 2 or 3 or 10 great accounting firms, and we can advise our clients to go do that. And that's how we view CMMC.
Mm-hmm.
CMMC is something that if their revenue stream is dependent upon defense contracts,
Yep.
period, full stop, you have to be CMMC educated
Mm-hmm.
and compliant, and you shouldn't be doing that on your own.
Yeah. So talk to me about the multiple side of this. So are you seeing differences in the multiples that some of these organizations are selling for if they are CMMC and they do have DoD contracts? Like, if I take two companies exactly the same size, of like people and locations, all that stuff is the same, and their revenue totals are the same, but one is DoD contract revenue and the other one is commercial revenue. Is there a difference in the multiple of those?
So what you asked me was commercial versus defense valuations.
Yep.
There were other things you went into there, which I want to go back to because they
Okay.
sound like fun to talk about.
I love it.
But the question at hand is, are identical companies, one is selling to the Defense Department, one is selling to commercial, are they more or less valuable? It's a great question. And the answer is, and I'm not going to just do the it depends part. I'm not.
I was waiting for that.
I'm not. I'm going to be more specific and say it depends on the program they're on. Okay, not just generic. It depends.
Yeah.
You know, Bill said it depends. Right? Bill said it depends on the program.
Yeah.
So, I know you know this, and I know a lot of your audience knows this. In the commercial and defense world, a lot of middle market companies are on programs. So Boeing doesn't say, send me a thing. Pratt & Whitney doesn't say, send me a thing. For the most part, they'll say, send me a thing that goes on the, name the engine, name the airplane,
Yep.
name the weapons system. Not always, We have a client right now out in California, wonderful business, and they're on some serious classified stuff. Not secret, but classified, right?
Mm-hmm.
And CUI and things that need to be protected to a meaningful level. They don't know what stuff goes on. And they've asked and they've been told, thank you very much for asking. You're a great company, you're patriotic, but no, we're not telling you where that goes.
Yeah.
And that's how that world operates in many cases, right?
Wild. Yeah.
But that's how it operates, and how it should operate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because if you have a breach, there's less damage done if there is a breach. And look, nothing's infallible. There can be and will be breaches. Yep. Part of the whole thing of CMMC is not to eliminate the chance for breach.
Yep.
It's to be aware if there is a breach, right?
Yep.
So not knowing where it goes is probably in this country's best interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, it does depend on the program. And so a lot of the buyers of the companies that we sell will do due diligence in a programmatic way.
Interesting.
So they will look at your revenues and say, not just, oh, how much did you sell to Pratt & Whitney last year? How much did you sell to Safran last year? Name all the major players in the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they will not only ask your sales by country, by OEM, whatever. They'll ask what program you were on. Why? Because some programs are more valuable than others.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on a defense program that just got cut,
Yep.
okay? And we can go through a long list of programs that got cut, right? From helicopters to fixed-wing aircraft, but it changes from administration to administration and, quite frankly, a little bit from day to day.
Mm-hmm.
But ramp up, 737, we are at low rate production because of all the things that happened. Production ramps up, you're on those programs, that's great for your business. That's the kind of due diligence that buyers do.
Wow.
They're not going to give you $40 million without that kind of due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, it depends on the program you're on. You could be on a defense program that just got production cuts and your value went down,
Yep.
and vice versa. And so generally speaking, it's more about the program. It matters the sector. If commercial aviation was really in a recession right now, it would matter. Commercial aviation, you can't get a seat on an airplane. Although there's concern about tariffs and the economy, which I'm not going into because I'm not smart enough to know. But the airlines have said that their growth rate is going to decline. Right? Not that their growth is going to decline. The rate of growth is going to decline, which still means they don't have seats, they don't have enough airplanes. So that market is still very strong. And the defense business, the defense industrial base could see some activity from the cuts that are taking place by the Department, or DOGE, whatever it's called, right, of government efficiency. But our understanding is that major programs are not getting cut at this point in time. Mm-hmm. And so again, back to the programs you're on. Both sectors appear to be very strong, and again, it's programmatic.
Got it. That's interesting because I have the unfortunate luxury of talking to manufacturers in Connecticut and trying to advise them on whether or not they should go down the CMMC route or not. Mm-hmm. Because I like the way that you summarized it, where you said that it's really based off of the program. Well, I'm talking to them about what portion of your business is CMMC focused. Mm-hmm. And I think another layer of that is like, what does the outlook of that program look like? Are you expecting that program is continued to be funded? Is the length of that contract for a certain extended period of time? Because at the end of the day, if I'm an organization like you mentioned, 20 million to 150 million in manufacturing, and my revenue right now is only $1 million in CMMC, does it really make sense to go down the road of making sure that all of your systems and everything that you're doing is completely compliant to CMMC? And there's certain requirements. The expense of CMMC may not be worth the portion of your revenue. And so it's interesting to understand also the deal side of it, to say, well, does it make sense for the deal? Because you might go implement all this stuff and then find out that program just got cut.
Correct.
And then you're going to lose the revenue stream from the CMMC side.
Correct.
And although, yes, it's great business practice, it's all based off of NIST, which is like the framework.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, you might be investing in something and just turn that into a sunk cost.
Look, here in Connecticut, we're making motors for the F-35.
Yep.
Right? We're making submarines down in Groton.
Yep.
There's a lot of dollars being spent here in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Sikorsky's got sustainment on the Black Hawk. Not a lot of production, but there's sustainment, and there's the 53, and there's other programs. Connecticut has a lot invested here, right? And you don't need to be a prime contractor to need to be CMMC, right? There's flow down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, Sikorsky Electric Boat can't award you work if their contracts are CMMC compliant, right, which they obviously all are. There's flow down requirements that they can't give you the work. You can't go on a commercial contract on that.
Yep.
You may not be a prime contractor. You may never talk to the Defense Department
Mm-hmm.
or any contracting officers, but there's flow down.
Yep.
And so 100% right. And so it is a big investment to be CMMC compliant.
Mm-hmm.
It is. But if you want to be able to bid on these contracts, and that's the issue, we had concern about, are you compliant with your existing contracts, and what are the regs, and what do they say, what do they say,
Mm-hmm.
what's the interpretation? It was messy.
Yep.
But now that we got a framework, it's clear. If the contract has language requiring CMMC level 1, 2, or 3, you're done. If you're not at that level, you may not bid.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
But to me, it's the right to do business. That's what it is. If you want to be in that marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
you got to invest these dollars for the right to bid on these contracts.
Yep. Yeah. It's got to be part of your strategic plan, right? At the end of the day, if your business, if you're looking to grow, and specifically in the, the defense side of aerospace, then you need to make sure that you're actually planning to change the way that your business runs and functions to align to those compliance standards. At the end of the day, that's what you need to do. That makes me think about the sell side of that transaction. You're going out and trying to find buyers, right, for those organizations. How often do you see non-current CMMC buyers getting brought into the conversation to buy your CMMC
Right.
seller, right? Like, how often does that happen?
So strategically, not very often.
Mm-hmm.
So that when a strategic, and by strategic we mean not a financial buyer, right? Another company buys another company.
Yep.
Although it happens for the most part in our marketplace, we are selling smaller companies to larger companies.
Mm-hmm.
And they are at least aware of CMMC before they go into this, because it's a strategic move.
Yeah.
So they're not buying a company that's got meaningful defense content without wanting to buy a company with meaningful defense content.
Mm-hmm.
And these are professionally managed companies that have these things mapped out and strategically understood for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
That's different, though, than a financial buyer.
Yep.
And so we have seen financial buyers that may have a meaningful book of business that's mostly commercial with a little bit of defense. And that defense business was not highly focused, or it wasn't important to that owner. It was 20% of revenue of this important commercial aviation business. Mm-hmm. And they've decided that they want to increase their defense practice portion of that business through an acquisition strategy. And what we will see there is they're typically professionally managed, and they are aware. So they're not blindly looking to get into defense without having hired consultants, had strategy meetings, thought about this well in advance, and they've got a team supporting them. They may be RPOs that are CMMC knowledgeable.
Yep.
But the actual private equity executives may not be. And I've been in meetings where they've got consultants that are expert, real experts, right? Mm-hmm. in CMMC, RPs, or they may even have assessment level certifications, but the executives in the room are like, "Could you say that in English?" Right? Stop using the jargon and speak in English. Mm-hmm. But that's not a problem for the most part because they brought in these highly trained professionals. And to them, it's just a small piece of their understanding the need to get a deal done.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to pull back out of the specific CMMC world and dive a little bit into your specific background in M&A. Yep. And so if I'm someone that wants to get into the M&A space, right, and like work for a firm or work for an organization that, you know, is active in the M&A space,
yep.
you know, what are some things that I should be considering, or some places that I could go to as far as like resources to be able to find myself into that space?
So you're asking someone's in school, for example?
They're either in school or they're graduating, they're an accountant, right? And they're like, you know, I don't want to be an auditor. I want to go into the M&A side and, you know,
so,
some of that.
I'll bend your brain a little bit, Sal.
Yeah.
And and given who I am and where I come from, this isn't going to surprise you all that much, but I am going to surprise you a little bit. In our firm, we're all very good with finance. We're all good with contracts, negotiations. What we're really good at is understanding the small aerospace and defense company. Mm-hmm. That's what makes us special, and I think that's what makes us great, is that we've got those technical skills, right? We know M&A, but you can go to college, graduate school, you can read some textbooks. It's not rocket science. The accounting is difficult. The due diligence is difficult. It takes decades to really understand it. But the general concept of I'm going to help sell a company, and not that different from selling a house. It's hard work. You got to do a good job. It's not rocket science, right? We are not going to the moon.
Yep.
I wanted to, but we are not. Okay?
Yep.
But I believe that for a small firm like us, it's understanding the industry that matters more. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a little self-serving or just based on my experience. But if someone says, I want to be in aerospace defense, mergers and acquisitions, first off, give me a call.
Love it.
Give me a call.
Yeah.
Seriously, give me a call, because we're always looking for great people and passionate people. Right? But I can tell you the kind of people we hired. We've got one of our most junior people went to the Kelley School, Business School, University of Indiana, graduate with honors, 4.0. And he loves this industry.
Yep.
You know, I'm not sure you need a 4.0. It does help, right?
Yep.
Max
Certainly.
is a very smart guy. But to really want to be doing this, and I firmly do believe this, everybody that works for us really wants to be doing this. And it's the passion that enables us to, we're crunching numbers and it's late at night and we're pushing papers, but we all want to serve the client. And we want to serve that client that's a mostly family-owned business or small business, and we want to serve that client in aerospace defense. We're passionate. And so that really is my comment. If you want to be doing this work, you really have to want to do this, right? The hours are very long. They can be really long. In our work, the downside is that deals take on a life of their own. There's a lot of other parties involved. There's a lot of money involved. It's probably the most important financial event of someone's life, the client. I mean, this could be their entire net worth. It could be 2 generations of net worth. Emotions can run very high, and the hours can be extremely long, right? You can work 24 hours in this business sometimes. So you got to love it, and you got to want to do it. And so that would be my comment. If someone wants to be in M&A, in aerospace and defense, you got to get a finance degree. You got to know accounting. You got to understand mergers and acquisitions. You need a technical education. Liberal arts is fine, but you need an education. Do you need an MBA? Maybe, maybe not. But you need to understand the concepts, read some great textbooks. You need to be detail-oriented and smart. But most importantly, you got to really want to do this and serve the client. And love aerospace and defense. And my favorite place in the world is just flying my airplane. So that's what I would say. I would say be passionate about this, the education, the training, but most importantly, be passionate. Really want to do this.
Yeah, and I think that serves in not only the M&A space, but in in business in general, right, is you're spending a lot of your time, sometimes might be 24 hours round the clock, right, depending on the deal, but you're spending so much time doing the things that you do every day that you have to be passionate about it. It's got to be something that truly fills your cup, and making sure that that's something that you think about ahead of time when you go into that, I think is a big part of it. But I love the fact of, if you want to do M&A in a specific space, like, understand the space, right? Finance, accounting, MBA, all the other stuff, sure, totally get it. You have to understand it. But understand the space, because there's M&A firms that do things for all the different spaces specifically. Right. And so if you can be an expert in that space, it just makes your ability to step into it that much more valuable.
Correct.
So.
I think as an M&A banker in the middle market, I think being specialized in an industry enables you to bring more value across the board to your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point in the episode, we're going to pivot towards our typing test, where at the end...
Typing test?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't, it wasn't in the contract,
It wasn't.
Sal.
That's right. This is a new
It's a
amended...
breach of contract.
No, it's an amendment that
An
second
amendment.
you walk through
Did
the door...
I sign the amendment?
You automatically approve when you walk through the
Automatic
door.
approval.
Yeah, it's good. I recommend in anyone's contract that they have those the second you walk into the room. But I just wanted to say I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me today. The insight has been great, and I think for me it's truly eye-opening to understand what things that you have to understand in the M&A space, specifically around CMMC and the manufacturing world. So I appreciate the perspective today, and again, thanks again for the non-alcoholic beers and giving me that experience. I think that's something that I'll definitely take away.
It was an honor. I was honored when you called me up and it wanted me to be on this. I've been watching these podcasts. I think they're great. I think you're building something really wonderful here, and it's been my privilege to join you.
Appreciate it. So, goal of the typing test here, make sure it's 30 seconds on easy. Once you click go, it doesn't start until you actually start typing.
Okay.
Spelling counts, so I would recommend going back. If you mistype a word, it'll pop up red and show you. But no pressure. You just don't want to be last.
None. Okay, we ready?
I'm ready when you are.
I'm nervous. Wait. Okay, here we go.
Fire away.
I can't type.
It's okay. You just can't be the worst. That's at the end of the day. Just from my own experience, okay?
Mr. 70 over here.
Mr. 70, you do whatever you need to do. 30 seconds is fast.
Now is he doing one finger or he's doing all fingers?
No, he's a real typer.
No, I'm not that fast.
You locked in that time, though.
Well, I didn't
You
get
were
stuck
locked
and
in.
go back because he kept telling me go back.
Come on, 20. Come on, 20.
27.
Hey!
Hey!